My name is Michael and I work as an electrician in Denver, Colorado. I've been married to Olivia for 7 years. Until recently, I considered our marriage perfect. How wrong I was. It all started with a strange phone call at 3 in the morning. Olivia grabbed the phone faster than I could wake up. She spoke in whispers, "No, not now. He's right here." When I asked who it was, she said it was her colleague Rebecca having problems with her husband and asking for advice. But the voice was male. The next day, I accidentally saw a message on her phone from a number without a name. "Can't live without you. When will we see each other again?" Olivia noticed my glance and quickly hid the phone, explaining it was spam from some dating service. For weeks, I collected small details that didn't form a complete picture. New gold earrings I hadn't bought. Expensive perfume that a friend gave her. Sudden meetings on weekends. New habits in bed that we'd never discussed. The worst part was that Olivia became the perfect wife. She cooked my favorite dishes, bought expensive gifts for no reason, was attentive and caring. As if she was trying to compensate for something. The turning point came 2 months later. Olivia said she was going to a corporate retreat in Aspen for the weekend. I decided to surprise her and show up unexpectedly. The hotel where the event was supposedly taking place told me there had been no corporate event for her company. I started searching for her throughout Aspen. And I found her. She was at a restaurant with a man I'd never seen before. They sat at a table in the far corner, holding hands. Olivia was laughing in a way she hadn't laughed with me in a long time. Instead of causing a scene, I decided to investigate further. I took several photos and drove home. When Olivia returned, she told me about the wonderful corporate event, and even showed me fake photos with colleagues that were obviously taken at a different time. I spent the following weeks like a real detective. I found out her lover's name was Hunter, and he worked as an investment broker. Rich, successful, unmarried. They had been meeting for 5 months. Olivia had even rented an apartment downtown in his name where they spent time together. But the biggest blow was yet to come. While checking our joint accounts, I discovered that Olivia had been secretly transferring money to an account opened under the name Alexandra Wilson. After investigation, I found out it was her own secret account. She was preparing to run away and stealing our family savings. The amount was staggering, over $30,000. Money from selling my stocks that I had been collecting for 5 years to buy a new house. Olivia had access to the account as my wife and was gradually transferring amounts, hoping I wouldn't notice. That's when I realized, this wasn't just betrayal. This was a planned escape with my money. Perhaps Hunter wasn't as wealthy as he seemed, or they had decided together to finance their new life at my expense. I could have gone to the police. I could have caused a scandal. But I had a better plan. First, I secretly hired a lawyer and a private investigator. I gathered all evidence of the betrayal and theft. Then I consulted an accountant and transferred all remaining money to a new account that Olivia couldn't access. Officially, this was legal. The money was earned by me. Then my game began. I started acting suspiciously. I accidentally left detective agency websites open. I received fake calls during which I loudly discussed surveillance of my wife. I placed fake private detective business cards in her jacket pocket. Olivia started getting nervous. She began asking about my plans more often, checking my phone. I could see her panicking, thinking I was hunting her down. Actually, I wanted her to accelerate her escape plans. And it worked. A week later, Olivia told me her mother had fallen ill in Oregon and she needed to urgently go care for her. Of course, this was a lie. I knew her mother had died 3 years ago. I believed her and even offered to come along. Olivia quickly refused, saying her mother specifically asked for her to come. She insistently asked me to stay and work so I wouldn't lose my salary. On the day of her departure, I kissed her goodbye, wished her mother a speedy recovery, and waved as the taxi disappeared around the corner. Olivia didn't know this was the last time she would see our home. As soon as she left, I acted quickly. I changed the locks on the house, canceled her access to all accounts, filed for divorce demanding compensation for the stolen money, and sent copies of all evidence to the agency where Hunter worked. But the best part of my plan was what happened next. Olivia, of course, didn't fly to Oregon. She went to Hunter. But what she didn't know was that Hunter was already married. His wife Stacy simply worked in another state and came home once a month. That very weekend when Olivia planned romantic days with Hunter, his wife decided to surprise him and returned home early. You can imagine the scene. Stacy opens the door to her own house and sees a strange woman in her bedroom with her husband. But that's not all. It turned out Stacy was a lawyer with very influential connections. When she learned about the affair, she started her own investigation. And she found information about Hunter's other women, including financial scams he was running. The agency where Hunter worked, having received my information about their scam with my money, conducted an internal audit. It turned out Hunter had been using client accounts for personal needs. He was fired and taken to court. And Olivia found herself in the worst position. When she tried to withdraw money from the secret account, she discovered I had blocked all operations through the court. She was stuck without money in a strange city, with a man who had just been fired and whose wife had filed for divorce. The first call from her came 3 days later. She was crying, begging for forgiveness, saying it was all a mistake. She asked permission to come home. I calmly replied, "Olivia, you made your choice when you decided to steal our savings and run away with another man. Now live with the consequences." I simply didn't answer the next calls. A month later, I received a letter from her lawyer. They tried to challenge the account blocking, but all my actions were completely legal. The money returned to my account, and Olivia was forced to sign the divorce agreement on my terms. The last I heard about her, she was working as a waitress in some cafe in Colorado Springs and living in a cheap rented room. Hunter moved to another state trying to avoid court cases. Sometimes friends ask if I feel guilty for taking such cruel revenge. But I think differently. Olivia didn't just betray me, she planned to ruin my life and run away with my money. She got what she deserved. A year has passed now. I bought a new house, smaller but cozier. I started dating Rachel, a nurse from the local hospital. She knows my whole story and says she respects me for how I handled it. Life taught me that trust is the most valuable thing we have. And when someone destroys it, you need to be ready to protect yourself by all available means. Olivia wanted to outplay me. But it turned out I play this game better. But my story doesn't end there. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I received an unexpected call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Hunter. "Michael," he said, his voice shaking, "we need to talk." I was curious. What could we possibly have to discuss? "It's about Olivia. And what she's been doing since everything fell apart." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop downtown. Hunter looked terrible, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, wearing wrinkled clothes. This wasn't the polished investment broker I'd seen in those surveillance photos. "She's been stalking us," he said without preamble. "Both me and Stacy. My ex-wife had to get a restraining order." I leaned back in my chair. "What do you mean, stalking?" "She blames us for ruining her life. She's been showing up at Stacy's law firm, calling her clients, trying to destroy her reputation. She followed me to 3 different job interviews and told the employers I was a thief and a cheater." I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "And you want me to do what exactly?" "Talk to her. Make her stop. She still loves you, Michael. I see it in her eyes when she screams about how we destroyed her marriage." I laughed bitterly. "She destroyed her own marriage when she decided to steal from me and run away with you. But you don't understand," Hunter continued desperately. "She's completely lost it. Last week she broke into my apartment and destroyed everything. She poured bleach on my clothes, smashed my computer, even killed my fish." This was getting interesting. "Did you call the police?" "Yes, but she was gone by the time they arrived. And she's smart, she never leaves enough evidence for them to arrest her. It's like she knows exactly how far she can push without crossing the line." I studied Hunter's face. He was genuinely scared. "Why should I help you? You participated in stealing my money." "Because," he said, pulling out his phone, "she's not just coming after us anymore." He showed me a series of photos. They were of my new house, my truck, Rachel's car. Olivia had been watching me too. My blood ran cold. "When were these taken?" "Last week. She's been parked across from your street every night. She knows about Rachel. She knows your routines. She knows you go to Murphy's bar every Friday after work." This changed everything. I had thought Olivia was just a cheating, money-grabbing wife who got what she deserved. I hadn't considered she might become dangerous. "What exactly are you suggesting?" I asked. "Help me get her committed. She's having a mental breakdown. She needs help and she's going to hurt someone if we don't stop her." I thought about Rachel, about the life I was trying to rebuild. "I'll need to see proof of what you're saying." Hunter pulled out a small recording device. "I've been documenting everything. Listen to this." He pressed play and I heard Olivia's voice, but it was different from the woman I'd married. Harsher, more desperate, almost unhinged. "You destroyed everything," she was screaming. "Michael was mine. That life was mine. I'll make sure you all pay for what you took from me." There was the sound of something breaking, then Hunter's voice. "Olivia, please just leave us alone." "Never. I'll destroy her like you destroyed me. That little nurse thinks she can just waltz into my life? We'll see about that. I felt sick. Rachel had no idea she was in danger. There's more, Hunter said, fast-forwarding the recording. Listen to this part. Olivia's voice came through again. He thinks he's so smart, changing the locks, taking the money. But I know him better than anyone. I know his patterns, his weaknesses. And I know exactly how to hurt him where it counts. I stood up abruptly. I need to go. Michael, wait. What are we going to do about this? I turned back to him. There is no we. You got yourself into this mess. But if she comes near Rachel or me, I'll handle it my own way. I left Hunter at the coffee shop and drove straight to Rachel's apartment. I needed to warn her to make sure she was safe. But when I arrived, her neighbor told me she hadn't come home from work yet. I called the hospital where she worked. They said she'd left her shift an hour ago. My heart started racing. I tried calling Rachel's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I drove around her usual route from the hospital, looking for her car or any sign of trouble. Finally, I found her car in the parking lot of a grocery store. Rachel was inside, shopping, completely unaware of any danger. I waited by her car until she came out. Michael, what are you doing here? You look terrible. I told her everything about Hunter's visit, the recordings, the photos of our homes. Rachel listened with growing alarm. We need to call the police, she said immediately. And tell them what? That my ex-wife is taking pictures of our houses? That she's upset about our relationship? They'll say it's a civil matter unless she actually does something. Rachel was quiet for a moment. So what do? We be careful. We change our routines. And we wait for her to make a mistake. But I was already formulating a different plan. If Olivia wanted to play games, I'd give her a game she'd never forget. Over the next week, I set up security cameras around my house and asked my neighbor, an off-duty police officer named Jake, to keep an eye on things. I also started varying my schedule, taking different routes to work and making sure Rachel did the same. But I was also laying a trap. I knew Olivia well enough to predict her next move. She was emotional, impulsive, and she felt cornered. People like that make mistakes, and I was going to be ready when she made hers. I started leaving subtle clues that Rachel and I were getting more serious. I made sure to be seen buying an engagement ring at the jewelry store where Olivia used to shop. I booked a table at the restaurant where we'd had our anniversary dinners. I even looked at wedding venues, knowing that word would get back to her through mutual friends. It worked better than I expected. 3 days later, my security cameras caught her. She was in my backyard at 2 a.m. trying to break into my house through the back door. But I was ready for her. I'd been sleeping in the guest room with a view of the backyard, and I'd seen her car parked down the street hours earlier. I called Jake first, then 911. By the time Olivia got the back door open, there were already police cars surrounding the house. She was arrested for breaking and entering, and when they searched her car, they found a bag full of items that painted a disturbing picture. Photos of Rachel and me, detailed notes about our schedules, and a bottle of acid that she'd apparently planned to throw on Rachel's face. At her arraignment, Olivia looked nothing like the woman I'd married. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes were dirty, and she kept muttering to herself. The judge ordered a psychological evaluation. The evaluation revealed what Hunter had suspected: Olivia was having a complete mental breakdown. The stress of losing everything, combined with her inability to accept responsibility for her actions, had pushed her over the edge. She was sentenced to 2 years in a psychiatric facility, with the possibility of additional jail time if she violated the restraining orders that both Rachel and I had obtained. But even then, the story wasn't over. 6 months later, I received a letter from the psychiatric facility. Olivia was requesting to see me. Against Rachel's advice, I decided to go. The woman who sat across from me in the visiting room was a shell of her former self. She was heavily medicated, spoke slowly, and seemed to have trouble focusing. "Michael," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I'm sorry." I didn't respond. I just waited for her to continue. "I know what I did was wrong. All of it. The cheating, the money, the stalking. I know you'll never forgive me, and I don't deserve forgiveness. But I need you to know that I'm getting help. I'm trying to understand why I did those things." She paused, struggling with her words. "The doctors say I had a personality disorder that got worse under stress. They say the person who did those things wasn't really me, but I know that's not an excuse. I made those choices." I looked at this broken woman and tried to reconcile her with the person who had shared my bed for 7 years, who had laughed at my jokes and cried during sad movies. "Why, Olivia?" I finally asked. "Why did you throw away everything we had?" She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, tears were streaming down her face. Because I was scared. Scared that I wasn't good enough for you, that you'd leave me eventually anyway. When Hunter showed interest in me, it made me feel powerful, desirable. And then it became this web of lies that I couldn't escape from. So you decided to steal my money and run away? I thought if I could start over somewhere else, I could be the person I wanted to be. I thought the money would give me the freedom to reinvent myself. I know how stupid that sounds now. I stood up to leave. It doesn't matter anymore, Olivia. You made your choices and now you have to live with them. I know, she said. But Michael? I hope you're happy. I hope Rachel makes you happy in ways I never could. I left without saying goodbye. A year later, Olivia was released from the psychiatric facility. I heard through mutual friends that she'd moved to another state and was working in a group home for troubled women, helping them navigate their own psychological issues. She never contacted me again, and I was grateful for that. Rachel and I got married 6 months after Olivia's release, and we now have a daughter together. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how I handled the situation with Olivia. If I think I was too harsh, too calculating. But I look at my life now, at Rachel, at our daughter, at the home we've built together, and I know I made the right choices. Olivia taught me that love without trust is just an illusion. And when someone betrays that trust so completely, so deliberately, you have two choices. You can let them destroy you, or you can protect yourself and the people you care about. I chose to protect what mattered most. And I'd make the same choice again. But the final twist in this story came 2 years later, on a rainy Thursday afternoon. I was at home with my daughter while Rachel was at work when the doorbell rang. Standing on my porch was a young man, maybe 25, with familiar green eyes and dark hair. He looked nervous, shifting from foot to foot. "Are you Michael?" he asked. "Yes. Can I help you?" "My name is Connor. Connor Wilson. I think Olivia was my mother." My blood turned to ice. "What do you mean, was?" "She died 3 weeks ago. Car accident. I found your address in her things along with this letter. She wrote it for you." He handed me an envelope with my name written in Olivia's handwriting. I invited him in, my mind reeling. Olivia had a son? In all our years together, she'd never mentioned having a child. "She gave me up for adoption when I was born," Connor explained, as if reading my thoughts. "I found her 2 years ago, and we'd been slowly building a relationship. She told me about you, about how she'd messed up the best thing in her life." With shaking hands, I opened the letter. "Michael, if you're reading this, then Connor found you, which means I'm gone. I hope you can forgive him for reaching out. He doesn't know the full story of what happened between us. I wanted you to know that I spent every day of the last 4 years regretting what I did. Not just the cheating and the money, but the person I became in the process. The stalking, the threats against Rachel. I'm ashamed of who I was. Working with troubled women at the group home taught me something important. Hurt people hurt people. I was so broken inside, so afraid of being abandoned, that I destroyed the one relationship that actually mattered. I never told you about Connor because I was afraid you'd think less of me. I was 17 when I had him, and I thought giving him up was the right thing to do. But it left a hole in my heart that I tried to fill with the wrong things: attention from other men, money, the fantasy of a different life. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that despite everything, the years we had together before I ruined it all were the happiest of my life. You made me feel worthy of love, even though I clearly wasn't ready for it. Take care of Rachel and your daughter. Be the husband and father I never let you be with me. Goodbye, Michael. Olivia." I sat there for a long time, holding the letter, while Connor waited quietly. Finally, I looked up at him. "She never told me about you," I said. "But she should have. You seem like a good person." "She was trying to be better," he said. "The last 2 years anyway. She talked about you a lot. About how you taught her what real love looked like, even if she couldn't appreciate it at the time." I showed him photos of my daughter, told him about Rachel, about the life I'd built after Olivia left. He shared stories about the mother he'd barely gotten to know, about her work helping other women who'd made mistakes similar to hers. When he left that afternoon, Connor asked if he could stay in touch. He said he'd like to know more about the person his mother had been when she was happy. I said yes. Not because I'd forgiven Olivia, I'm not sure I ever fully could, but because Connor deserved to know that part of his mother's story too. That evening, after Rachel came home and our daughter was asleep, I told my wife about Connor's visit and Olivia's letter. "How do you feel?" Rachel asked, curled up beside me on the couch. "Sad," I said honestly. Sad that it took dying for her to really understand what she'd thrown away. Sad that Connor grew up without knowing either of his parents. Sad that it all had to end the way it did. But not guilty? I thought about that. No, not guilty. I protected us the best way I knew how. I can't be responsible for the choices Olivia made after that. Rachel nodded. I'm glad Connor found you. He seems like he needs to understand that part of his history. And that's where this story truly ends. With acceptance, not revenge. With understanding, not bitterness. With a new relationship that honors the good parts of the past while protecting the future I'd built. Olivia's betrayal taught me who I really was under pressure. It taught me to trust my instincts, to protect what matters most, and to never mistake manipulation for love. But her death taught me something else. That people can change even if it's too late to fix what they've broken. And sometimes, the best thing you can do is give someone's child the gift of knowing their parent was capable of love, even if they lost their way for a while. Connor visits us now a few times a year. My daughter will grow up knowing she has a sort of older brother, someone who connects her to a story that's complicated but ultimately human. And maybe that's the real lesson here. That our stories don't end with revenge or justice or even forgiveness. They end with the next generation, and the chance to help them understand that love is worth protecting, truth is worth telling, and sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply survive someone else's worst choices and build something better from the ashes. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Maybe YouTube will no longer offer you my channel, so subscribe to it by clicking subscribe on the right under the video to receive new interesting stories. Also on the right of the video there is a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to, and you can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.